Tonight is the night. Right now, at this very moment, the Pittsburgh skyline is lit up with the lights of the NFL draft stage. The commissioner is preparing to walk to the podium, and 32 franchises across the entire National Football League are sitting in war rooms with their final decisions locked in. Some of them made weeks ago, some of them made in the last 24 hours, and at least one of them sitting inside the Cleveland Browns facility that is genuinely, legitimately, unflinchingly up in the air until Andrew Berry submits that card. But underneath all of the receiver debates and tackle discussions and trade-down scenarios that have dominated the pre-draft conversation around Cleveland, there is a bigger question. A question that dwarfs every individual pick. A question that connects to a history so long and so painful that a significant portion of the Cleveland Browns fan base has simply learned to stop feeling it directly and started processing it as a kind of dark comedy. The quarterback question. Still, again, always. Because tonight, on draft night in Pittsburgh, the Cleveland Browns will make decisions with their picks at number 6 and number 24, and potentially with additional selections accumulated through trades. And every single one of those decisions either directly or indirectly answers the most important question in this franchise's recent history. Not who do we take tonight, not what position do we address first, but the foundational, defining, has haunted us for 25 years question that everything else exists in service of. Who is the quarterback of the Cleveland Browns? And the answer to that question, the real one, the honest one that is finally becoming clear through a minicamp, through a coaching change, through a draft night that is happening right now, could define this franchise's future not for a season or two, but for the next decade. Get it right tonight, and everything changes. Get it wrong tonight, and the 41 quarterback carousel adds another name and another chapter to the most painful running story in professional football. Everything is on the line. Tonight is the night. And the full story of what this draft night QB decision actually means for Cleveland, and why it matters so much more than any individual pick, starts right now. Subscribe immediately if you want the deepest, most honest coverage of what is happening in Cleveland. This is the video you need to watch before that first pick is announced. Let's go. To understand the full weight of the quarterback decision that surrounds tonight's draft, you need to understand the number. Not any of the pick numbers. Not 6 or 24 or 39. A different number. A specific number that sits at the center of this franchise's identity like a wound that keeps getting reopened every time it is about to heal. 41. Since 1999, when the Cleveland Browns resumed operations as an NFL franchise after the 3-year relocation hiatus, 41 different quarterbacks have started at least one game for Cleveland. No NFL team in professional football comes close to that number. The next closest team has 10 fewer starting quarterbacks over the same period. 41. And that number does not include the players who were on the roster, who practiced, who held clipboards, who spent training camp competing before being released. 41 who actually started an actual regular season game. 41 human beings who walked onto a professional football field wearing a Cleveland Browns uniform at the quarterback position and were given the responsibility of leading this franchise, and all 41 of them are now in the rearview mirror. CBSSports.com. Think about what that number represents. Not just the failures, though there were many. Not just the bad picks, the overpaid veterans, the developmental projects that never developed, the first-round selections that flamed out. Think about the systemic reality it describes. A franchise that has, for 25 consecutive years, been unable to identify, develop, and retain a quarterback capable of leading it to sustained competitive success. A franchise that has cycled through the position so relentlessly that Cleveland Browns quarterback has become its own genre of football story. A specific, recognizable narrative structure in which hope and disappointment follow each other in such reliable sequence that the only surprising thing would be if they did not. The list is genuinely remarkable in its breadth. Tim Couch, Spurgeon Wynn, Kelly Holcomb, Jeff Garcia, Trent Dilfer, Charlie Fry, Derek Anderson, Brady Quinn, Colt McCoy, Seneca Wallace, Brandon Whedon, Jason Campbell, Brian Hoyer, Johnny Manziel, Josh McCown, Austin Davis, Robert Griffin III, Cody Kessler, Deshaun Kaiser, Drew Stanton, Baker Mayfield, Case Keenum, Jacoby Brissett, Deshaun Watson, Joe Flacco, P.J. Walker, Dorian Thompson-Robinson, Kenny Pickett, Dylan Gabriel, Shedeur Sanders, CBSSports.com. 41 names. 41 attempts. 41 chapters of a story that the Cleveland Browns are still trying to end tonight in Pittsburgh. And the specific decisions Andrew Berry makes at picks 6 and 24. Who he selects. What signals those selections send about the organization's commitment to the quarterbacks already in the building. What the draft night activity communicates about the long-term plan at the most important position in professional football. Will either move this franchise closer to ending that story or add another paragraph to it. That is the weight of this moment. Not the abstract weight of a team with needs trying to fill them. The specific, historically grounded, 25-year weight of an organization that has been searching for an answer at quarterback for longer than most of its current players have been alive. Tonight is not just draft night. Tonight is a referendum on whether Cleveland has finally found what it has been looking for, or whether the search continues. The quarterback room walking into this draft night consists of 3 players: Deshaun Watson, Shedeur Sanders, and Dillon Gabriel. And the decision Cleveland makes with its draft picks tonight sends a specific message about each of them, a message that will be read, analyzed, and internalized by the players themselves and by every football observer in the country. Let us start with Watson, because Watson is the unavoidable financial and organizational reality that shapes everything else. Watson has appeared in just 19 games since arriving in Cleveland in 2022 following a blockbuster trade. He missed significant time due to a lengthy suspension and major shoulder and Achilles injuries. He is heading into the final year of his contract. If he does not get on the field this season, his future in the NFL is a significant question. There is some optimism within the Browns building that Watson, 30 years old, can return to form with a fresh start under Monken. Heavy Sports. Browns GM Andrew Berry said of Watson at the NFL Combine, "That's a little bit more art than science. I don't think you can go in there blindly and think, we're going to treat this past season the same way we thought of 2024. He was obviously hurt, and it affected his performance. How you weight that and how you come to your decisions may be different from building to building, but it's just something you work through and try to make the best call that you can." CBSSports.com, art more than science. That is Andrew Berry describing the process of evaluating Deshaun Watson's future contribution. Not with the precision of analytics or film study, but with the uncertain brush of human judgment about a player whose peak was genuine and whose condition is genuinely unknown. The art of deciding whether what Watson was is still present in what Watson is. And tonight's draft decisions are part of that art. If the Browns add a quarterback tonight, in the first round or the second, it is not necessarily a statement that Watson is finished. But it is absolutely a statement that the organization is not waiting for Watson to prove he can still play before they begin building around what comes next. Berry was asked directly about Sanders' future if Cleveland drafts a quarterback tonight. His answer was characteristically careful. "I'd say I don't love dealing in hypotheticals," he said. "I guess I'd say this. If we add a quarterback, we have a lot of love for our quarterbacks in the room. That decision would be made independently of anything we add to the room." CBSSports.com. Independently of anything we add to the room. That specific phrasing is important. It tells you that adding a quarterback through the draft does not automatically mean one of the current quarterbacks loses their standing in the competition. The competition remains open. The evaluation continues. What changes when a draft pick is added is the depth of the room. More options, more information, more pressure on every existing player to perform rather than simply exist. The addition of a prospect does not close the competition. It intensifies it. But here is what the draft edition does communicate that Berry was not willing to say directly. It communicates that the organization is not satisfied with the current options as a long-term solution. If Cleveland were fully confident that either Sanders or Watson would emerge from training camp as a legitimate franchise-caliber starter capable of leading this team for the next 5 to 7 years, they would not be using draft capital on the position. The fact that the door remains open for a quarterback addition, that Berry refused to close it even when specifically asked, tells you something real about the organizational assessment of whether the current room contains the answer. And that organizational assessment is the context in which tonight's non-quarterback picks must also be understood. Because every receiver and tackle and edge rusher Cleveland drafts tonight is being built for someone. The offensive line upgrades acquired in free agency are protecting someone. The skill position additions coming through the draft will be thrown to someone. And whether that someone is Watson recovering his former brilliance, or Sanders fulfilling the potential the anonymous sources have been trying to suppress, or a draft pick landing in the building and forcing a competition that ultimately produces the right answer for this franchise, the infrastructure being built right now is being built for a quarterback. The question is simply which one. Shedeur Sanders' case for being that quarterback received its most public and powerful articulation in the days leading up to this draft. Because what he did at the minicamp press conference, standing a microphone, challenging the media, declaring himself bulletproof, asking for winning energy, was not just a press conference moment. It was a statement about who he is as a leader and who he intends to be as a franchise quarterback. Sanders described his relationship with Monken in terms that spoke directly to the organizational investment the new coaching staff has made in his development. "Coach just spoke life into me," Sanders said. "When you do, daily regimen, daily time." The framework that Monken gave Sanders, the specific, disciplined, step-by-step approach to development, is the framework that has been missing from his experience in Cleveland since he arrived. The previous coaching staff, by Sanders' own careful but unmistakable implication, did not provide this framework. They did not communicate in a way that reached him. They did not adapt their teaching to his learning style. They managed him, managed the perception of him, managed the narrative around him, managed his place in the depth chart order, but they did not develop him in the specific, investment-heavy way that development at the quarterback position requires. Barry gave his most specific public assessment of what he needs to see from Sanders when he spoke at the NFL Combine. "I think the biggest thing that we want to see from Shedeur is just continued growth," Barry said. "I think he grew a lot from start 1 to start 7. I think certainly playing more efficiently, not putting the ball in harm's way as much would be important while maintaining the ability to produce out of structure and generate explosive plays. ESPN grew from start 1 to start 7. Barry himself confirmed the trajectory, the arc of improvement that is the single most important piece of evidence in Sanders' favor as the long-term answer at quarterback. Not the absolute statistics, which were bad, but the direction of the statistics. The clear, measurable, week-by-week improvement that made his final 2 starts, wins over the Steelers and the Bengals, division rivals with playoff-caliber rosters, look like the first real glimpses of what this player could become in an environment that actually supports his development. CBS Sports described Sanders' debut season honestly. Shedeur Sanders' NFL debut was historically bad, and despite brutal circumstances, there were deeper concerns. But those concerns exist alongside a competing body of evidence. The 364-yard performance against Tennessee, the back-to-back division wins to close the season, the Pro Bowl alternate selection that nobody talks about, the specific detail that he grew from start 1 to start 7 in ways that the general manager of the franchise noticed and specifically cited. CBSSports.com. The franchise is at an inflection point with this player. If they draft significant weapons and protection tonight, if they add a receiver who can be the true number 1 target this offense needs, if they address the left tackle situation that left Sanders being hit repeatedly from his blind side in 2025, then the evaluation of Sanders in 2026 training camp and the 2026 regular season will be the most meaningful quarterback evaluation this franchise has had since Baker Mayfield's early seasons. A real evaluation. A fair one. With actual support around the quarterback, in an offense designed by a head coach who has specifically praised the player's elite playmaking ability and said it would be the coaching staff's fault if they could not develop him. That is the version of the quarterback decision that draft night is setting up. Not the superficial, who starts week 1 version. The foundational version. The draft picks made tonight will either create the conditions for Sanders to succeed or continue the cycle of giving a Cleveland quarterback inadequate support and then cycling to the next option when the inadequately supported quarterback fails. The decision the Browns make at pick 6 is the first and most visible piece of the quarterback puzzle. And the specific nature of that decision, who they take or whether they trade, tells you something about how they have framed the quarterback problem. ESPN lists Cleveland's top 3 needs entering this draft as offensive tackle, wide receiver, and quarterback. The Browns spent the first wave of free agency upgrading their offensive line, but they still have a glaring hole at left tackle, and Cleveland also needs a playmaker to lift the league's least productive receiver room in 2025. ESPN if they take a receiver at 6, Carnell Tate, Jordan Tyson, or another pass catcher. They are saying, the most important thing we can do for the quarterback is give him a weapon worth defending. They are saying that whoever wins the QB competition in training camp, they will be doing it with a genuine number 1 target for the first time in this franchise's recent history. They are betting that the quarterback answer is already in the building, and the building just needs to be finished around it. If they take an offensive tackle at 6, Caden Proctor, Spencer Fano, Monroe Freeling, they are saying, the most important thing we can do for the quarterback is keep him upright. They are saying that protecting the signal caller from what happened to Sanders and every other Cleveland quarterback in recent memory, the sacks, the pressure, the inability to step into throws because the pocket is collapsing, is the prerequisite for meaningful quarterback evaluation. You cannot evaluate a quarterback under fire. You can only evaluate a quarterback with protection. If they take a quarterback at 6, which would require one of the available signal callers to have risen dramatically in Barry's internal evaluation over the past weeks, they are saying something far more dramatic. Something that would immediately reframe the Watson-Sanders-Gabriel competition in ways that no amount of diplomatic, we have love for our quarterbacks in the room, language could soften. A quarterback taken at 6 would be a direct organizational statement that the current options are not trusted as long-term franchise answers, and that the rebuild at the most important position continues with new and more premium capital than was spent on either Sanders or Gabriel in the 2025 draft. NFL Network's Cynthia Freland identified 3 quarterback options for the Browns in this draft: Alabama's Ty Simpson, LSU's Garrett Nussmeier, and Clemson's Cade Klubnik. Simpson completed 305 of 473 pass attempts for 3,567 yards and 28 touchdowns in his final college season, with top-tier accuracy from a clean pocket and impressive athleticism on throws on the run. Cleveland Browns. Simpson's connection to Todd Monken is a specific and important detail. Simpson's father and Monken go way back and communicate frequently. Simpson himself said at the NFL Combine, "If I had the opportunity to play for the Browns, it would be a dream come true." Monken said he was fond of Simpson and appreciated the fact he waited his turn to start at Alabama behind Jalen Milroe. CBSSports.com. The Monken-Simpson relationship is not nothing. When a head coach has a pre-existing familiarity with a quarterback prospect, when there's a personal connection built through years of the coach's network overlapping with the player's family, that relationship can tip close decisions. Not because nepotism drives NFL personnel decisions, but because familiarity reduces uncertainty. Monken knows things about how Simpson processes information, how he responds to pressure, how he leads, things that scouts and film sessions can only approximate. That personal knowledge has value in an environment where the margin between prospects is often thin. Whether it is enough to push Cleveland towards Simpson in this draft tonight, with Watson and Sanders already in the building competing for the job, that is the genuine unknown. What is known is that Barry refused to close the door and the Monken connection exists, which means the wild card is real, even if it is not the most likely outcome. The broader franchise implication of tonight's draft extends beyond the individual picks. It extends to the organizational statement made by the totality of the night, the combination of what they take, what they pass on, what trades they make or decline, and how all of it adds up to a coherent vision for where the Cleveland Browns are going. The best version of tonight for Cleveland is one where Barry leaves Pittsburgh with a clear, compelling story. Receiver at 6. Tackle at 24. Developmental depth at other positions through the remaining picks. The narrative. We have invested in the quarterback position through the draft and free agency over the past 2 years. We have a genuine competition happening in our building right now, and we are building the infrastructure around that competition that gives us the best possible chance of finding out whether the answer is already here. That is the scenario that respects the Sanders investment, acknowledges the Watson complexity, and commits organizational resources to building a team that can actually win if the quarterback performs. It is the scenario where Monken's "it'll be our fault if we can't develop him" statement is matched by organizational action, draft picks, offensive line investment, scheme design, coaching attention, all pointing in the same direction and giving the whole thing a legitimate chance to work. Barry's pre-draft philosophy was stated clearly. Our mindset going into the draft with our most valuable asset isn't about, hey, just trade it away. It's maximizing the asset. And that can, at different times, take different forms. It can be selecting a player. It could be trading up. It could be trading down. The principle that drives every decision is value maximization, not the comfort of the familiar, not the pressure of the narrative, not the weight of the contract. Value. Pure and simple. NFL. Value maximization applied to the quarterback question means investing tonight in the players and positions that increase the probability of the answer being found. Not just next season, not just for the Watson final year, but for the 3 to 5 year window during which the question of who leads this franchise at quarterback will be definitively answered through performance on the field. When Sanders was selected in the 5th round, he said, "The main thing I'm just proving is that Coach Stefanski and Barry are right. That's it. They're right about picking me. I'm a good decision. I'm a good draft pick for them." NFL. He was proving it to coaches who were fired. He is now doing it for a new coaching staff that appears to genuinely believe in him. The franchise has changed around him. The system has changed. The environment is changing with the draft picks being added tonight. And the player at the center of it all, the one who told a room full of skeptical reporters that he feels bulletproof, who asked the media for winning energy, who wore number 2 and meant every symbolic thing that number represents. That player is in the building, doing the work, building the relationships, and preparing for the most important competitive season of his life. 25 years. 41 quarterbacks. One franchise trying to end a cycle that has defined it for as long as most of its current players have been alive. Tonight in Pittsburgh, the Cleveland Browns are making decisions that will either accelerate the end of that cycle or extend it into another year, another competition, another set of carefully worded statements about open processes and fair evaluations. The picks they make tonight will be analyzed for weeks. The trades or trade downs will be debated. The names called from the Pittsburgh stage will generate immediate reactions that soften or harden over the months. Whether Andrew Barry and Todd Monken and Jimmy Haslam actually believe that, truly believe it, with a conviction that produces real action and sustained commitment rather than the familiar hedged optimism that has preceded every previous Cleveland quarterback era, is what tonight's draft decisions will reveal. The commissioner is walking to the podium. Pittsburgh is electric. The war room phones are ringing. And the Cleveland Browns, for the 42nd time in 25 years, are about to make a decision that could define their franchise's future. The difference this time, the thing that makes this particular draft night different from all the ones that preceded it, is that there's a player in the building who already says he knows how this story ends, who feels bulletproof, who asked the media for winning energy before the wins arrived, who told his Hall of Fame father to stay home because the work was not finished yet. The draft starts tonight. The franchise's future is being decided right now. And somewhere in Berea, Ohio, second-year quarterback wearing number 2 is watching the picks come in and understanding, perhaps better than anyone, that everything his football life has been building toward begins with what happens in this building over the next 3 days. 41 quarterbacks have tried and failed. The 42nd is not waiting for the next one. He is already here, and he is ready. This video is created purely for entertainment, analysis, and discussion purposes. All factual information, statistics, quotes, and reports referenced in this video are sourced exclusively from publicly available, published media sources including ESPN, NFL.com, CBS Sports, Bleacher Report, Heavy.com, Yahoo Sports, Newsweek, The Land on Demand, Cleveland Browns official website, WKYC, and other credible NFL media outlets. Every quote attributed to a real individual in this video is drawn directly from verified, published press conferences and published articles. This channel does not fabricate, invent, or misrepresent any quotes, events, statistics, or factual claims. All editorial commentary, narrative framing, analysis, predictions, and opinions expressed in this video are the views of this channel alone and should be understood as entertainment journalism and editorial opinion, not factual reporting, investigative journalism, breaking news, or official statements from any organization or individual. The Cleveland Browns quarterback situation, draft decisions, roster moves, and all personnel matters are subject to change at any time. This channel is not affiliated with, endorsed by, or connected to the NFL, the Cleveland Browns organization, or any individual player, coach, or team official mentioned in this video. Predictions and speculative analysis contained in this video are opinions only and may not reflect actual outcomes. Viewer discretion is advised.